All right. Good evening, everybody. I haven't done one of these in a while. So let's get into it. So I haven't done one of these in a while. I haven't really touched upon the subject. I'm not cut out to be a YouTuber, so I guess we can get that out of the way. But if you actually do like the content, feel free to hit the subscribe button, all that, corny shit, please subscribe so I don't have to work anymore, all that fucking corny shit. But, a while back I did a handful of videos about, leaving the US, for a better life. I know some of them were jokes, but, some of them were not, like, obviously you see my shorts, I need to get to Thailand, I need to get to random ass fucking countries that I couldn't even think of. But obviously, there's been times in the past where people have left the U.S. for, whatever reason they may have. And in fact, I'm going to actually share a video, on a channel that just popped up in my news feed. I've watched a few of his videos before. So let me actually play it from the beginning. Let me do a fucking share screen. All right, Americans leaving the U.S. Yeah, this is the one. All right.
Are leaving the United States in numbers that we have never seen in modern history. If we go back all the way to the Great Depression, the United States has...
Yeah, I'm not doing this to promote his channel. Obviously he's doing way better than I am. Another one of his videos, 31,000 views 1 hour ago. So clearly he's, over 3 million subscribers. So he's clearly doing very well. So that's not the point. I don't need to spread his channel. But let's go back to that video. All right.
Experienced net negative migration for the first time, going all the way back almost 100 years. The Trump administration is saying that falling immigration and rising deportations are a victory. In other words, when presented with this data, the Trump administration goes, well, of course, that's great. We're deporting a lot of people and we're limiting immigration. But the problem is, if you look beneath the hood a little bit, the number of Americans that are choosing to just leave the country, not for immigration-related reasons, is going sky high. Now, one of the problems is we don't have perfect exit data because the United States stopped comprehensively tracking citizens who leave a while ago. But if you look at foreign residency permits, passport applications, home purchases, university enrollments, citizenship renunciations, they all point in the same direction. I was just in Portugal. Portugal's American population is up more than 500% since the pandemic. Ireland and Germany are seeing record inflows of Americans. Applications for British and Irish citizenship are at historic highs, and requests to renounce American citizenship jumped sharply in 2024 in advance of the swearing in of Donald Trump, and they are again accelerating. Now, this isn't really theoretical for me in a lot of ways. First of all, I was just in Portugal, met a ton of Americans who relocated there. These are not tourists. These are not, we're trying it out for 6 months. These are families with kids in many cases, mid-career professionals, retirees, people who sold their homes in the US and permanently have moved to Portugal. And when I would ask them why, there were only a few answers, and they were very clear. They were things like, I don't like wondering whether there's people in the grocery store who might pull out a gun, or at the movies who might pull out a gun. Like,
I'll buy that.
They just don't really have guns around. They don't worry about their kids having to do active shooter drills.
And that's a whole nother subject. But it is something that definitely needs to be addressed. As it stands, we're the only really developed nation that's actually had an epidemic of this nature. When it comes to things like shooter drills, making products. In fact, I saw one on it was Tom Powell's channel. He had a video where he discussed a bulletproof whiteboard. And his take was, it's not disgusting that the product was made. It's just more disgusting that it had to be made. Anyhow, let's continue.
They don't worry about school shootings. They don't worry that a medical emergency is going to bankrupt them.
Okay, medical, that's a whole other thing in of itself. If you live in a country that has universal health care, let me know in the comments or in the chat. Is it better or is it worse or indifferent? Because that's the thing that, we face here in the U.S. You get some type of serious medical condition that needs some type of surgery, or otherwise you're fucked and you can't get the money. Yeah, you don't have the money, you die. You're basically dead. And that also ties into a point of, you're worth more than your family dead than alive. I know it sounds kind of grim, but it's a reality. That's why this whole market for life insurance. Anyhow, let's continue.
They have predictable healthcare costs. Insurance is affordable. It's just lower stress. Now, more than 100,000 American students are enrolled abroad. International students coming to the U.S. are declining.
All right. He's not wrong there.
And there's a Gallup poll that found 1 in 5 Americans would permanently leave the country if they could. And the if they could is a big part of it. During the 2008 recession, for those thinking, well, it's merely economic, it was 1 in 10. So that is double that rate. Now, I think this could reasonably be called the Donald Dash. Trump's second term has expanded deportations. They've cracked down on universities. There's a crackdown on free speech. There's an increasingly volatile.
Oh, yeah. I'll definitely go with the free speech one. In fact, I might even use YouTube as a classic example. One of my own videos, they said was determined to have, hate speech. And I was trying to find out where the fucking hate speech was. It was a video. Yeah, it was basically a video where I guess I, mentioned stuff about, mentioned certain transgender vloggers. But I didn't say anything, mean about them. That's the problem. Let me go to that. All right, it's gonna take. Yeah, that was that one. All right, so I'm not gonna bother messing with that one anymore. They reached a decision, so I can't do anything about it at that point. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. So yeah, this gentleman is actually right, and it doesn't matter. This isn't a left or a right thing. It's almost like no matter what you say, you're gonna get in trouble. I mean, right now it's more or less if you don't agree with the current regime, you're gonna get in trouble, and you may very well get accosted because of that, and that never should have been the case. It doesn't matter whether you're a somebody saying they don't believe in they don't like LGBTQ. We'll use that as an example. It's a sin. Blah blah. Use that as an example. Prior to the Trump administration, you held one of those signs, you lost your job, and hell, you might even have gotten arrested. Because they could have construed that as inciting violence. Now it's the reverse. Now it's shifted in the other way. Where let's use the mockings of the Charlie Kirk murder. People going on, celebrating, then all of a sudden the same people lost their jobs, and hell, a few of them may have even gotten investigated. And obviously, the food stamp lady, that was another one. Yeah, what'd you do last month's Fields James? You know, we all know about that one. So again, you know, and in fact, I even mentioned this in a previous live stream. You know, I think it was Pierce, whatever his name is, was interviewing Andrew Tate on the topic. You know, and when someone like Andrew Tate says, "I don't have all the answers," you know, you know, shit's gone south. And someone like him, who's very, very confident, I mean, like him or hate him, you know, he's very confident in his stance on whatever. When he said he doesn't have all the answers, you know, shit's fucked up. Yeah, let's continue on the video.
Political climate, deportation rates, you know, all this different stuff. And that is a factor in people choosing to live. Now, there's also systemic issues. Housing costs are a systemic issue in the United States. Healthcare expenses are bigger than Trump. Childcare costs, student debt, burnout, all of this stuff is bigger than Trump. So I don't think it would be accurate to pretend that this is only because of Donald Trump. But historically, when people lose faith in leadership or stability, they leave. Americans left during the Great Depression. Citizens fled Nazi Germany, Castro's Cuba, Chavez's Venezuela, Russia after Putin's invasion of Ukraine. The U.S. is not usually one of those places.
He's 100% right. Yeah, up until, you know, maybe the latter part of the, or up until, you know, right around the turn of the century, we've never ever heard about people trying to flee the U.S. You know, we got to get the fuck out of here. You know, we've never ever fucking, you know, heard about that. I think that's a 21st century phenomenon. Now, let me know what you think. You know, if you're a bit older than I and you've been around, did you ever see stuff in the past, you know, before this whole digital age, about, you know, people trying to, you know, get the fuck out of the U.S.? You know, because I can't recall a time, you know, because obviously, you know, we were all taught, you know, U.S. is, you know, the place, you know, freedom of speech, all that stuff. But now it's almost like, it seems like, you know, we're slowly losing our freedoms. And again, it really doesn't matter, in my opinion, you know, who's president. You know, because they all want to have things their way. In fact, let me continue on with what he's saying.
That we think of people leaving and fleeing, but emigration is happening. It's sending a signal, and it means that there are a lot of people in the United States who believe that their prospects are better elsewhere. And that is really an indictment of what is happening in this country. Now, I think it's also important to briefly.
Now, let me add a caveat. I know there were some other channels that I've watched that actually covered people who left the U.S. to avoid student loans. You know, in fact, there was one channel that's pretty much abandoned. Actually, a handful of them where they fled because of student loan debt. They just couldn't get out, and they were just like, fuck it. And you never heard from them again. Yeah, there was one that had that one video. And then there was another gentleman that had, you know, his too. And then that was it. You never heard from them. In fact, let me continue on with this one. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if he's going to mention that, but let's see if he
sort of address the group of people like Elon Musk and others who are really worried about people not having enough babies. They're obsessed with, we've got to get the birth rate up and we need more. We need people having 3, 4, 5, 6 kids.
That was a boomer thing. Elon Musk is Jenna, but whatever. I mean, obviously Elon Musk can afford to raise them, but, you know, I don't know. People are just panicking about getting birth rate up. I mean, and, you know, here's the other side of it, you know, I'll buck the trend on it. You know, immigrants, you know, they're taking the jobs that you can't get Americans to do. You know, especially the undocumented ones. They're taking all those jobs, you know, because, well, one, companies, you know, they can treat them like shit, you know, which doesn't really solve the issue when you really think about it. And again, what I would like to see is unbiased news sources that actually report, you know, the amount of actual criminal undocumented versus, you know, someone's grandma or family member that's been here for 30 fucking years and never got their documentation straightened out. You know, I would love to see actual statistical numbers on that. You know, put in front of my face that I can look at, not somebody just babbling, you know, from either side, not somebody babbling that, you know, everyone is a criminal or the only ones he's going after is, you know, someone's grandma. You know, I would like to see numbers of individuals, why they were deported, and all that stuff. All right, let's continue.
Kids. Economics are often their primary concern. They believe we need to be growing in terms of population in order to grow economically. And that's sort of a controversial assertion. You know, it didn't, China came to a different conclusion, but that's during their one-child policy, but that's a different story. If you believe, as many of these MAGAs do, that growth, economic growth depends on population growth and talent retention, when you start seeing working age professionals and families leave, you would say, wait, we're losing tax revenue, we're losing entrepreneurship, we're losing innovation, we're losing future births as well, because some people that leave will have kids other places, not here. So the people like Elon Musk and RFK, you know, they're warning about declining birth rates. If Americans are relocating abroad, that compounds the demographic challenge. And you can't just sound the alarm about.
And you know, it's funny, both examples you mentioned, did you know that men can father children right up until the day they die? So if they want to do something about it, fucking get more girlfriends. All right, let's get on with it.
Fertility and ignore the fact that people are leaving and you're not letting enough people in. And that shrinks the working age population. It puts pressure on Social Security. It puts pressure on Medicare, puts pressure on GDP growth. If these MAGAs were serious, they would realize we need way more immigration to the United States. Legal, certainly, but by some population experts' estimates, we need to triple the number of legal immigrants coming into the United States.
And he uses the keyword legal. And that ties into a whole other thing that I've, you know, observed in my time, especially my college days, you know, where a fellow student had legal documentation at some point. You know, they had to get their visa in the first place to go to school, and then they get denied when they go to renew it, which doesn't make any sense. I don't know if it's because they get denied because of, you know, bad grades or whatever. I'm not sure, but let's continue.
States just to account for the declining birth rate. But the big topic here, the Donald dash, people saying, I don't want to live in the United States under Donald Trump. And so quite simply, I am going to leave. Now, many of you have written to me and you've said, David, are you thinking of going somewhere? Now, there is sort of like a where could I go kind of thing. Certainly, I could go back to my birth country of Argentina at any time. Economic stability is not exactly a dream there. There's always the possibility of starting the citizenship process in Israel, but that's not appealing to me. There is a path to citizenship for Argentinians in Spain. That's another sort of possibility, but I'm not seriously considering it, although I would understand especially why people in red states would be thinking about it.
This is a classic example. Tina Turner was somebody who renounced her U.S. citizenship. She may her soul rest in peace. I don't know what her reasons were, but she moved to Switzerland and became a Swiss national and lived there, you know, until her passing. And in fact, I think, there's probably countless others that I can think of. I mean, obviously, you know, Boris Johnson, that's another one. I mean, he was technically a U.S. citizen, you know, because he was born on U.S. soil, but he had no real ties other than the fact that, you know, his parents did the old school version of Netflix and chill while they were in the U.S. and he was born. So he had no pull to the U.S. So he obviously, you know, he was like, I don't think I need to keep that citizenship. And the U.S. is also one of those countries that, you know, they will find ways to fucking tax you no matter where you live. I think it's like 1 out of 2 countries. I don't know what the other one is, but let's continue.
So record emigration out of the United States, appropriately called the Donald Dash. Thanks for watching. Check out this other video.
All right. Well, let me shift gears from that. And let me watch this one.
Welcome back. For nearly 60 years, the possession of guns by users of illegal drugs have been banned by federal law. The Trump administration says it's essential for public safety. Next week, the Supreme Court is considering whether that ban is unconstitutionally broad. It's a high-stakes case involving marijuana and the states that have legalized it in some form. Our Devin Dwyer has a closer look at the case and growing debate over whether cannabis should get a carve-out in gun law.
In the foothills of Pennsylvania's Allegheny Mountains, oil and forestry are big business. Donald Trump is big politics. And for hunters like Rob Green, guns are a big part of local culture.
If you don't support the Second Amendment in Warren County, you probably should leave.
Green is an Army veteran and father of 3, and until earlier this year was the top law enforcement official in the county for more than a decade.
Most crimes that we prosecuted involved drugs or alcohol. I mean, that's a good 85 to 90%.
He also happens to be a user of cannabis, one of 440,000 Pennsylvanians with a state-authorized medical marijuana card.
So how often do you use?
Yeah,
When I was the DA,
see where this is going, especially with the comments.
once or twice every week or two, maybe once a week on an average would be good. I'm not a daily user.
Does marijuana serve a medical purpose for
I
you?
need to see this one. This one's hilarious.
Administration's push for mass deportations hits close to home.
You went there to do your job,
Yeah,
and what did you get?
handcuff.
The home of Border Patrol.
And that's where that man thought he was showing up for just another job, but it wasn't. He wound up in ICE custody as immigration lawyers flooded federal courts with demands their client be set free.
They're called habeas corpus petitions, and NBC6
That's what I thought,
investigative
too.
reporter Tony Pipitone found the legal playing field for them is changing and not in favor of immigrants.
In court, habeas corpus is just a fancy Latin phrase that roughly means produce the body. It's a demand being made much more often as the Trump administration tries to meet its mass deportation goals by now.
All right. I think I've done enough live streaming. So let me know what you think. I mean, do you think leaving the U.S. because of the shit that's going on is the solution? Do you think people are, quitters and, don't hang in there? All that crap? Do you think people who, leave the U.S. for a better life, just to get out of debt, freeloaders? Let me know what you think in the comments, or in the chat. I'm about to end the stream because I've done enough ranting and raving. And I know you like to watch other people's channels instead of my own, hence the negative ratio of subscribers to video uploads. Anyhow, over and out. I'll talk to you.